in the style of music that you're working in, which I love that music.
Thank you.
Who are your biggest songwriting influences, sort of generally speaking? Because I mean, everyone knows as you develop and you move through life, we all have different styles of music that we love, and different phases where we go through enjoying different kinds of music. But who are the long lasting ones, and then who are the songwriters that work within the framework of that particular type of music that you like?
I mean, I would favorite just songwriter of mine ever of all time would be John Prine. Like, I love John Prine. I love his lyrics. I also love that he was never very good at guitar. And like, I've seen him, I had the privilege of being able to see him live, I think 3 times before he passed. And he's not a great player or singer really. But he's such a good guitar, or such a good songwriter. And I really love the simplicity in his lyrics that hold very profound truths as well. And so that's something that I've kind of always held myself to a standard lyrically, kind of putting myself against him. However, now genre wise is a very different genre for sure.
When do you start first getting into the jazz thing? Yeah,
the jazz thing, for me, so I've always enjoyed listening to jazz. My dad listened to jazz a decent amount growing up. But when I actually found this record, oddly enough, called Country Willie, that was pretty heavily jazz, old school jazz vibes, especially vocally. There's a lot of really interesting like background vocals and oohs and ahs happening on that record. And I've always loved what Willie Nelson did, where if you're a typical like cowboy chord guy, you could figure out 80%, even 90% of the chords in a song, but he'd always throw one chord in there where it would be like, wait, what was that? Like he'd throw like just one flat 9 or one diminished or something, just like in the middle of this country song that your everyday like country songwriter dudes, at least that I was like, and me included at the time, I was like, I cannot figure out what this chord is. And so it initially started being like, I wanted to be the guy who was doing that, I wanted to be the guy who was writing these folk songs that also had a diminished chord in the middle of it. Instead of just going from G to A minor, I wanted to go to G to G sharp diminished to A minor,
I think you just articulated what it is I've been trying to do with music this whole time.
And so that's kind of what I wanted to do. Like I loved that. And I never intended really it to dive into this like pre-war jazz vibe. But as I was learning these chords, I bought this book, which is great books, like less than $10 on Amazon, Mickey Baker's Jazz Volume 1. And it's just all these chords and very simple exercises. I was listening to that or working through that. And as I was working through that, a buddy of mine, this guy, John Fiorentino, actually, great guitar player himself and a music enthusiast, knows like everything. He was like, oh man, he's like, you should check out the Ink Spots if you haven't heard the Ink Spots, and you should check out the Mills Brothers if you haven't heard the Mills Brothers. And like, I heard those and I was like, oh, actually, this is like what I want to do. Like, I don't want to just do this like country thing with like...
So you were doing like country stuff before that?
Yeah, I was doing like just folk, kind of finger picky, Travis Picking style stuff, and like traditional folk songwriting sort of thing. I did that for a while. And that was mostly what I was on the road with. Like I did go out on the road with my first like jazz record in 2019, right before COVID. And nobody really got it or understood what I was doing. And I don't blame them, because I had just done like 6 or 7 years of touring folk stuff. And then all of a sudden I started doing this like pre-war jazz standard.
It's a great record. I was listening to it this past week, and I think it's a great sounding record. The production's really unique on it, but
that's the one that's just one, one mic. I had no idea what I was doing. And that record today is like doing better than it's ever done ever. Wow. Like it's getting like 6,000 streams a day. It's like crazy.
It is a very, very good sounding record. I was listening to it and I thought, God, it sounds It sounds very, very idiosyncratic in a wonderful way.
Yeah, it's definitely like technically not a well done thing, but I think that really worked. It's mixed in mono, which I thought was really fun as well.
I'm a sucker for some mono mixing. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
I'm a fan.
That was a fun little thing to do as well, and I kind of like used the vibe and the old school mixing style and all that stuff to kind of mask the errors, the technical errors in the recording, because I didn't really know what I was doing. But yeah, so that's like kind of what led me to doing the jazz thing fully is when, and that's also to continue with your question of like other people within the genre. It was like the Mills Brothers and the Ink Spots were like the initial like, oh, those are the dudes, you know, and then it expanded and like, I mean, Chet Baker Sings is like one of my favorite,
totally,
for sure. Yeah, like that, that record's incredible, and I really loved the Coltrane Johnny Mathis record as well. Okay, that one's really, it's very loungy and like almost corny, but it's I think it's awesome. And then this new record, which is more like New Orleans street jazz influence, has a lot more like Preservation Hall jazz band influence in it, and even like some like Leon Redbone, like vaudeville kind of vibes thrown in there as well. And so but yeah, I mean, whenever anybody asks me like the jazz influences, I'm gonna say like like Chet Baker, freaking love Frank Sinatra, I love Billie Holiday, like any great vocal standard person. Yeah, I think jazz from like a harmonic perspective can be a little bit intimidating to get into, but you definitely seem to have like a really strong grasp on all that kind of classic jazz harmony. Where does that come from? Did you just like learn a lot of standards, or? Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like you'll understand this, I feel like I've kind of approached it like I'm not trained at all. Like I took my first jazz lessons actually like a year ago. And so I put out a ton of jazz music prior to even having any formal training. I feel like I've kind of like punk rock skateboarded my way into it. Like I was just kind of like DIY'd my way into jazz, where I was just like, oh, that's kind of sick. And I've seen somebody kind of do this sort of thing. And I'm like, I wonder if I can do that. You know, like you see somebody do like a frontside flip or whatever, and you're like, wait, I think I could maybe do that, you know? And like, and just kind of figured out your own way to do it, even if it's not technically great. And I think that's kind of what I did, is where I was like, I don't know, I just like what I'm hearing. Yeah. I'm going to try to what you hear. Yeah. I'm going to try to do something like that. And I've always kind of felt like no matter how hard I tried, for example, to write like a Mills Brothers song, like if I learned, like I would learn some of their songs and I would try to write my own like Paper Doll or whatever, you know, and no matter how hard I did it, I'm still writing it in 2024, you know, and it's like, it's going to have my influences and me in it, that it's not going to sound like them. And so I kind of like just trusted that I would still just sound like me, you know, totally. No matter how hard I tried to like mimic something else. But that's like that's kind of how I figured out the harmonic structure of those songs and how those things worked. I learned a number of the Chet Baker Sing songs and a number of the greatest hits from the Mills Brothers.
If you like that clip, click on another one and then just keep doing that endlessly forever. It never stops, ever. Subscribe to our channels too.